Hi, Chris. It's good to see you again. I'm looking at your assignment for week 2, assignment 2, and our point of this assignment is to really focus on a use of appropriate use of aperture and to sort of select either a deep or a usually pretty shallow depth of field. And I'm looking at your images, and I'm looking at image 1, which is of a lake, and it looks like you said in your description that you used a wider aperture to create a depth of field. Typically, I think what you may have meant is that your aperture was narrow and shut down a little bit tighter, typically. And if not, please elaborate on that. Typically, what we're going to see with a narrower aperture, the smaller our aperture gets, the greater our depth of field. The wider our aperture, the more shallow the depth of field, as in image 3, right? So with this image, I feel like you did achieve that depth of field, right? And I'm seeing some elements of design here that are working well for you. The repetition and the reflection is good. We really get a sense of, kind of a texture in the grass, even though it looks to be quite some ways away. And so that's good. And I would like to talk a little bit about the rule of thirds. And the reason being is I feel like with the horizon line directly in that middle third, you're dealing with, a kind of a compositional hazard. And typically when a horizon line rests in that middle third like that, it does really it sort of tames the image and makes it visually a little bit less interesting. So probably what I would recommend that you do with that is pan down, okay? Maybe all the way to the top of that, and I'm going to hold a piece of paper so I can kind of crop it off myself, so you're going to lose me for a second. Maybe crop it off all the way to the top of the tree that is completely reflected, so the tree in the middle ground there. And then pan down just a little bit to get some of this sort of like luscious green, like water growth that's in the foreground. That would make it a little bit less or more interesting. Now, I would say pan up to drop the horizon line down lower, but your problem with that is your sky on this day, it looks like it was pretty overcast, and it's just, there's not a whole lot of data there, not a whole lot of visual information. And so that's really not going to help you so much. So definitely moving the horizon line up into that upper third would have been a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. As it is right now, you do have sort of an abundance of sky without a lot of data, without a lot of information. And you've got that sort of troublesome branch hanging down that really in and of itself is visually almost an incomplete thought, and it's not offering a lot to the photograph. So just keep these things in mind. Overall, though, you did meet the parameters of the assignment. And I would like to add that your contact sheet, let me look at that very quickly. I still feel like, some of the subject matter is definitely different here, but I feel like the goals of the assignment are pretty clearly articulated, even though we have a frog and the beach and stuff like that. So it does really kind of like loosely fit together. Just keep in mind, assignment to assignment, make sure the images on that contact sheet kind of represent well as a group. In this instance, I can see the parameters of the assignment in each image, and so I'm good with that. So let's move on to your second image, which I think is your best of these three. I would say the composition is pretty good, and speaking of the horizon line being in the middle third, there's a diagonal element to that. And so the line where the sand meets the water is kind of in your middle third, and then the line where the water meets the horizon line is also kind of occupying that space, but these are two distinct lines, one of them which is diagonal, and they are parallel and converging even though they're moving side to side. So that is visually interesting enough for me, really not to sort of nitpick that sort of rule of thirds violation there, because it is working, and on every occasion a rule is not necessarily going to ring true, right? So this is working for you. I feel like the sky is really nice. You've got some nice detail there. A lot of texture in the sand. Once again, good use of line. It looks a little, your image looks a little blue. And sunlight is kind of, it is inherently blue. That's the color of light you're going to get from direct sunlight. So even your greens in the chair, I understand there is blue in the chair, look a little blue to me. So I maybe go into hue and saturation and maybe pull the saturation of your blue colors down just a little bit. Or you could go into selective color and pull the blue out of certain portions of the photo. Or you could go into color balance and approach it that way. So once again, just the whole image looks just a tinge blue to me as far as the color correction is concerned. But I do feel like, again, you used a relatively narrow aperture here, and you're getting a pretty well-established depth of field. However, the person in the on the right-hand side of the frame is slightly out of focus, and she is very far away. So we may want to go ahead, and I really don't feel like she's a point of focus, and I'm not really sure how relevant she is to the image. At the same time, you know, I feel like possibly another reading of this image is you did open your aperture up quite a bit and selectively kept her out of focus. If that is the case, then this definitely is working out as far as the parameters of the assignment are concerned. So yeah, I would be curious as to, I'm going to look at your assignment detail really quickly. Okay. So yeah, let me know. Like I said, as I reevaluate this image, I would probably say that maybe you were at a medium f-stop, maybe around f8 or 11. And so you're getting some detail and some depth of field, but you still have the lady over there that's out of focus. And that's fine. You know, I just really wanted you to explore the functions of aperture in this assignment, and I really sort of feel like you've done so. Looking at the third image, excellent example of, you know, a really shallow depth of field. I understand what you said about the, you know, everything in the background being sort of busy and distracting, and you want the main focus to sort of be this flower and the buds there. And that's working well for you. The rule of thirds, you're definitely following that, and we are, because the subject is in that left hand sort of vertical third, kind of encroaching in the middle third, but that's fine. And the out of focus area on the right is really starting to function as sort of a negative space, so that's working well for you too. What I am seeing is like a lot of texture and detail along the petals of that flower. You can see the individual little hairs, which is good. And it looks like you had to make a decision here about whether or not to sort of shoot horizontally and kind of cut off that bottom blossom, or to shoot vertically and lose that negative space. And so maybe if we had widened out just a little bit and gotten the rest of that second blossom down there, we could have kept the same composition, and it would have been just as successful, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Overall, though, I mean, pretty good job here. I'm pretty happy with it. Once again, with the color correction, I'm thinking that this may be, and it's hard for me to tell because the flowers are indeed yellow. If it's hard for me to tell, it's a pretty close call. Consider that this might be a little bit yellow because your greens look a tad bit yellow. Now, green does inherently have some yellow in it. But just, you know, just keep a tight eye on that color correction. And once again, you know, we can always go into hue and saturation and kind of pull that yellow down a little bit, see if it makes the color look true to you, or if you feel like this is the scene as it appeared to you. Sometimes it's difficult with landscape issues just because, like I said, there's inherently a lot of yellow in there. Okay, so good job for this assignment for the most part, and I'm going to go ahead and look at your assignment or your work for assignment 3, and we'll talk about it then.